All right, YouTube, hello, welcome, and hello, Instagram as well, and just going about to go live on Facebook. Welcome to everyone on the podcast as well, and thanks very much for listening. I just want to check that we're ready to roll on Facebook. So just give me a second. Everyone's jumping in, so that's excellent. So Startup Business Q&A episode 113, and we're focusing on time management today. I'm really keen to do this, and actually it's weird that we've not really done a session on this in the past. The whole point of this one is that so many, I'm just trying to think a lot of the time, who is it that we need to be looking after? Who are the people who watch this? And also asking myself, who is it that really, or what is it rather, that really is on people's minds a lot? So the things I get asked about are often the same kind of things. It will be sales and closing and marketing and engagement. But also be things like investment, scaling and financing. But then this thing as well in terms of productivity, efficiency, effectiveness, and of course things like time management. So I'm really pleased with doing this. And wow, there's a lot of notes. I've just taken a load of questions have been sent through as well. I thanked people on Facebook for this yesterday. I wanted to say live as well, thank you so much to everyone that responds to these messages. So every Sunday on Facebook and now on like stories and Instagram and so on, what I do is I send out a message saying, this is the theme for tomorrow for the Q&A. If you have questions, let me know. And seriously, 113 weeks of this, and you guys always show up. And I always get questions asked, and I'm thrilled that, there's every single week 9-10 questions asked by different people as well. It's just phenomenal. So thank you. And look, everyone jumping online here as well. Thank you everyone on Instagram for joining. Thank you everyone on Facebook, and thanks everyone on YouTube. And again, thanks everyone for listening on the podcast as well. I'm thrilled to announce, and this is kind of the first time I've announced it here, or anywhere in fact, that the charity partner for next month's Entrepreneur Business live events, this is our live events in London, is the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So they are going to be our partner for October. It will mean that a part of the ticket sales will go as a donation to that charity. So I'm thrilled that they are happy for us to work with them. So thanks so much. And everyone give us a wave or say hi or something like that. That makes sure you're making yourself known if you're watching here. But if you have any questions on time management, do ask them. But otherwise, I'm excited about jumping into this. So let's get started because there's so many of them. And also, just not a caveat so much, but it should be interesting. Some of you have been following me for some time, some for years now, and there's some really fun things that with time management and productivity that have been asked over the years that have been that I've used. So I will go back over those to make sure everyone's clear on how they work. Thanks everyone for jumping in. So Danny, I can see you, Michael, Devon, Brandy, nice to see you all here on Facebook. Being Ratika, who I would like to say on Instagram, I think you're pretty much my #1 fan. You're always the first to like any post on Instagram, so thank you so much. It's never unnoticed. Mika9141, Julie Gal to you, Da Push Construction, Rashi Pavaskar, Busuna Digaboy, all of you as well on Instagram. Thanks so much for joining in. So let's get into the questions on time management. First one is Dot Lung. If you're not following Dot Lung, by the way, make sure you are. I'm doing an event with her in November, so she is going to be working with us for Entrepreneur Business Live on the 7th in London. And she's asked, well, she's written, oh my God, best time management apps and hacks, please. There are so many, but let's look at the important things first. The irony of time management apps is that you can overdo it to the point that you actually have so many apps that you don't in fact do the productivity thing. You're focusing so much on kind of managing all these apps. So I genuinely believe less is more here. However, good apps for when you're managing a team, I think my go-tos have always been Trello and more recently Slack. I tried it as a community idea with Slack, but it's better. That was better based in a Facebook group. But the workflow thing is quite good there. As far as working on your own is concerned, if you're like a solopreneur, still Trello as an app. I find also, it sounds weird, that one of the most important things I use is Messenger. so SMS with myself. So the person who sends me the most messages in the world is me. Stuff I need to remember and stuff I need to do, I send myself a message, but I schedule the messages for a time of day. And I'll get into this in a sec, but I schedule it for times of the day when I know I'm going to be doing certain things. So, for example, there was a thing relating to tax I needed to deal with yesterday. I remembered it when I was going to bed. So I sent myself a message, but I didn't send it. I kind of scheduled it so it would appear in my on my phone as a notification on the top of the pile at a certain time this morning when I was set to do that kind of stuff. So thinking about scheduling your messages, that's the thing that really helps me the most. It's kind of the app. But otherwise, you can't see it over here. I'm not really able to show it because of sensitive stuff, but I have a whiteboard too. And that whiteboard has the flow of stuff that needs to be done today. I can scrub things off as we go. I am a pen and paper guy. But I'm also, to give you balance to that and give you context, I'm a massive tech head as well. So I'm always using apps and things on the phone, but I'm a big paper and pen guy because of convenience. And what I mean by that is I can just glance like that and see my day as a view on the whiteboard. I can glance at a piece of paper and my information is there. I have to get my phone out and look at notifications and things like that. You might think that's a few seconds, but in the moment, I might need to think, what is it I'm doing at that time? Oh, look over and I've got that. Do you see what I mean? So it's important to have a mechanism that works for you, but being able to, in the moment, respond just like that really, really works. Hello, everyone jumping in. I've got people from all over the world. So, Ala, Luke, hello. I think it's your first time in here. Nice to see you in here. David Potts, Sherry, Diana over in Australia. I hope your show went well. Danny Batsil over in New Zealand as well. And everyone else on Instagram too. So that's important. Pen and paper works for me. I am constantly doing the scheduling of messages to send to myself. And it's to space things out in the day, because otherwise I have a list of stuff to do and it won't work. So I'll get more to that in a second. Best hacks. Now, there is a hack I've used for many years. There is a YouTube video, if you go to my channel, which you can find on the richardmoore.com, called the Time Island hack, which when I produced it about 3 years ago, it seemed to go down really well. And what was lovely was seeing comments and people picking it up and then using it in their businesses. So the idea of a time island is to create immovable islands of time in your day and or week where set things get done, siloing time for set tasks that are regular and repeatable. A perfect example of, probably if you're in a corporate space, possibly if you're working with yourself as well, an example of a time island you already have is lunchtime. So for most they have a time island. If you can imagine your day being the sea, an island is this immovable object in the middle of it, loosely speaking, and that is something that doesn't move. It's kind of non-negotiable. It is there. That's your lunch hour, for example. And obviously some people view their lunch hours in different ways, but the idea is that everyone knows, for certain people in certain companies, at this time on this day, I will be here having lunch hour. In the same way, on a Monday at 1 p.m. London time, I'm always here doing the Q&A for the past 113 weeks. Everyone will know that this is what I'm doing. My wife will know that if she wants to find me, she best not try to, because I'm doing the live Q&A at 1 p.m. And every Monday, that's what we do. So we will schedule things around that. So if I have a doctor's appointment, or if I am going to a meeting or something like that, or if I have a client who wants to see me, it can't take place at 1 p.m. on a Monday, because that's a time island set aside for this. Do you see what I mean? So that's the way I view this. So what you can do is, if you have, for instance, certain things you do for admin, checking emails, in my opinion, shouldn't be done all day, every day, as and when they pop up. Notification is nice to know, but it doesn't mean you have to act on it. And I can go all philosophical about that, but that's the view I have. But having, for instance, a time siloed as a time island for email checking is a very productive use of your time. So that's one thing I do. Dot has asked a couple of other questions. She's asked, Richard, how do I prevent procrastination? Or I'm going to be really specific. Preventing procrastination is because you have momentum. If you have momentum, that is because you're taking action. So action is the opposite of procrastination. Action is the product or rather, momentum is the product of action. The problem is that people look for too big an action in order to get themselves some momentum and get going, so they move away from procrastination. That can't happen if it's too big an action, if you're down here wallowing in lack of motivation, things like that. So what you need to do is take smaller actions instead. So minute actions. It's a beautiful feeling when you're like, progress. Even if it's like 0.1% progress, it is something. And an action can be, so to prevent procrastination, to build momentum, to therefore build momentum builds then motivation. It can be closing a browser. Maybe you've got YouTube open. I'm constantly asking myself, is this putting me on track? Is this what I should be doing right now? Is this the best spent use of time? It could easily be that it's not. And if you've got a browser open, perhaps YouTube, and you've just allowed yourself to stray a bit, the best action you might take, which is almost incidental, is move the mouse to the top right, click on the X or whatever, or the other side if you're on an Apple. Then close it down. That's an action. Okay, how does that make you feel? Now another action. What you need to do is put all these actions together. So squeeze them together. Intensity is everything. Little actions build momentum. Then you can take larger actions. It is hard because of a lack of willpower when you're demotivated and in a procrastinating state to actually take larger actions, okay? Unless there's a major reason why you should, such as urgency, accountability, or kind of some other kind of leverage that's forcing you to work. So what I focus on as much as possible is taking small actions to get momentum going, and then I go from there. It's like gearing, okay? The big things can happen because I'm moving. Now, if you are always in that state, then action and therefore momentum becomes a habit, and it becomes a habit to not procrastinate. So people talk about those that are highly productive, very, very busy individuals, and they look at idols in the entrepreneur world, the likes of Elon Musk, the likes of Gary Vaynerchuk, as hustlers who won't stop working all the time. And I wish they could be as motivated as that and as action-based and not procrastinate. And those two people as examples are just as lazy as you in their default state, but they have naturalized to being at a level of momentum. Sure, they have stuff that needs doing as well, but they've built in accountability to force them to get stuff done. But they've built a level of momentum based on habit around constant action taking that puts them in a place where when they wake up, because it's all they've known for years, it's all they've known for years, and therefore that's what they do. If you're in the opposite place, if you're in a habitual state of procrastination, it's hard, like I say, to build that willpower to move out of it. And as a result, the way to do it is small actions and just to kind of lay enough of that foundation that it becomes a bit of a habit. That's what's worked for me, I've found. Okay, so that's my response to it. Action is everything, even if it's small ones to begin with. Hi everyone jumping in here on Facebook. Nice to see you, Zach. Nice to see you. Was that Daniel's just popped in as well? Good to see you here. Yes, Danny, exactly right. The snowball effect happens once you start taking action. Quite right. Henna, good to see you on Instagram. And I think Daniel on Instagram as well. I love that you're keeping my numbers up on 2 platforms. It might even be that you're over on YouTube as well. I don't know. So third question from Dot. Let's just do them all to it. Is what is the secret to managing time for your to-do list? And this is what there's no more perfect opportunity to bring out the when to do list concept. So I'm quite proud of this. I'm sure I'm not the only person who's thought of it, but I decided to kind of, in my opinion, evolve the when to do list a few years back. It was like 2016. I thought of this. Again, I'm sure I'm not the only one who has, but I kind of documented it. It was picked up a couple of months ago by a writer for Forbes and featured in Forbes as a productivity hack. And the concept's really simple with the to-do list, with when to do this, which is if you have, hello Chris, hello Brian, hello Ron, if you have a to-do list, really simply, you tend to list everything. You do about a third of them on a good day, 2/3, but you never complete it all. What this is an aspirational list of things you'd like to have completed, but it's not actually effective for getting stuff done. It's just a list to remind you. However, the when to do list assigns a set time for each of those tasks. And what I'm doing there is gamifying the actual work I have set myself. So if I have 10 tasks set for the day, rather than having a list of 10, or even a list of 10 which I then organize into order based on certain mechanisms, based on what I would do first or second, for example, what I do instead is take a step up and basically add a time for each one. Those times, it takes me time to get used over the weeks and months. It takes me time to get used to understanding how long things actually take. My when to do list, which is essentially a to-do list with times assigned to each task, is very, very specific. It will be to the minute because I know how long certain things take. For instance, you might put down make a cup of coffee or make a cup of tea, 5 minutes. But actually, it's not. You go work out how long it takes to make a cup of coffee and tea. It actually takes a bit longer than that because there's all the mucking about going to the kitchen and checking stuff and whatever. You need time for what's called slippage, a couple of minutes here and there added in. So it might be that actually cup of tea making is 15 minutes. Might be that, for instance, with me on like a Thursday morning, my cup of coffee in the morning, I usually have it with my wife. So that's a lot longer than 15 minutes. Getting those things nailed down and understanding how long things actually take. Tweeting, how long does it take? 30 seconds? No, it doesn't. It takes 30 seconds if you know what you're going to write. But actually, if you're a content creator, that needs to be way more calculated. Maybe you're scheduling it. Perhaps you need to research a bit more what hashtags you're going to use. Now, sending a tweet, if you're going to do it right, is a 25-minute job. So knowing these things only can be effective and help you if you're spending time with yourself. But the short version is you gamify it by setting these set times next to each item. So on my whiteboard over here, I will have a list of my when to do list for the day. The first item on the list will always be right up the when to do list. And it will be something like 7:54 a.m. right to do list because I'm doing it at 7:54 a.m. for example. And then the next item, it will be what I'm going to do next. And the time it takes me to do the when to do list, say it's 3 minutes, I will then have, the next item is 7:57. You might think I'm being really tight and you're not allowing any room for slippage here and there, but you do. You allow room for maneuver if you need to. But the way you do it is people say, oh, you should never watch the clock during the day. And I think the opposite. You should be totally watching the clock because it creates these fun challenges throughout the day. Basically, your job is to beat the clock with these challenges. Now, if you're worried about quality of work because you're rushing, well, that means you're not assigning the right amount of time to things. If you need to be creative for a period, then you need to assign maybe a bit more time around that. But everything is scheduled. So I know exactly what I'm going to do at exact times of day. And of course, things can happen. So I'm willing to be able to kind of be agile. But what's fascinating is the great feeling you get when you're sitting there at like 8:30 in the morning. You look at that when to do list and you say to yourself, I know not only what I'll be doing at 3:45 in the afternoon, but also I know what will be done. And that's an amazing thing. It's almost like those things have been achieved already. What it does is it creates natural urgency and a great amount of hustle around it. What I love is that I have only the most productive days when I do my when to do list. I've experimented because I'm big at experimenting. I've experimented with trying not do it to not do it, and I'm not able to be on point as I am. Okay, so it's very, very important to try it out. The when to do is, if you want to check it out, I'll pop a link in here. Like I said, it was featured in Forbes. There's also a video. If you go to YouTube and type Richard Moore when to do list, you'll see it there. But the concept is really simple. Assign a time, gamify your to-do list, and it means you get everything nailed down. And it is beautiful going, right, I've got 7 minutes left before the end of this task and I start the next one. Let's get some hustle going. And a perfect example of this morning was before a certain time, before I had to set up for this very show, I completed 5 training sessions. So I'd written up, put the slides together, design everything like that, for 5 training sessions for a new client tomorrow. And I've done it in breakneck speed because there's no time for slippage. There's no kind of like looking out the window, procrastinating, thinking, things like that, and scrolling through timelines, because I'm hot on that challenge. And the accountability factor is huge. It really pushes you to try and make sure you nail these things down. Okay, so that helps. David Potts just asked here, is the room inverted in this episode, or was it inverted before? I just noted. So I don't know what you mean. I'm interested if there's a hack for this, by the way. On one of these streams, I'm using a camera, and the room will be inverted. So if I wrote on a whiteboard here, it would be a mirror image, which is tremendously irritating. If you look at the books, I believe all of them are probably inverted as well. But yeah, someone has a hack for that, it would be really valuable. Let me know. Thank you everyone who's joining in here. So say hi if you're on Instagram or if you're on Facebook. What are you working on right now? I'd love to hear that. But I'd also love to know, what's your number one productivity hack? Have you got a hack, or maybe an app or something like that? But great questions there from Dot, and hopefully that helps. Next question from Danny Battersill. Let's get yours in, because I think you're watching, Danny, from New Zealand. I saw you just pop up there, and you've asked, well, you've written, thanks a lot, Richard Moore. I was literally staring at your post as you commented. Well, in my world these days, there's so many things to work on: content creation, replying to messages and comments. There are freaking hundreds every single week now. I can't reply to them all. Good for you. Thumbs up if this is something you're encountering, by the way. As well as appropriate networking, appropriate contacts, building relationships with like-minded entrepreneurs around the world. It barely feels like I have time to stop these days. How do you manage it all? If my schedule is insane, I can't imagine what yours is like, because you've got family. Yeah, I have family time as well. I have a wife and 2 children. I balance that into it. But the hack on that is just what I was talking about. It's really simple. It's the when to do list. So you might think this is boring or dull or like really sterile, but I schedule my downtime. So I schedule time to have with family. And people might think, well, that's what a sad life where you are having to schedule time with your family. But here's how it works. If I schedule time with my family, I've not scheduled that time to do any business work or anything like that. And as a result, I'm going into that time with a clear awareness that I have this amount of time where I don't need to be doing anything else. So they get undivided attention. On conversely, when I'm working on business things, that gets my undivided attention as well. So by siloing time for even a cup of tea and things like that, firstly, it gets done. Because it's stunning how people neglect family and friends because they don't schedule the time for it. If you book this stuff in with yourself, then it becomes part of your day. I have a big aversion to the idea of work-life balance, the idea that there is one and the other, and you have to kind of balance the two. I really like it, just sounds cliche, but I really like it just being life. And so I dip into work, if you want to call it that, when I do, and I dip into family when I do. There are no like, oh, well, it's working hours, so don't do work now. It is very much like, well, I want to see family at this time, so that's when I'll do it. Perfect example is about 3:30 in the afternoon. My children will be coming back from school and nursery. Why would I want to work right then? I want to be at the door greeting them, or even going to go see them. So an opportunity for time out for 10, 15 minutes could be taken there, scheduled in to actually go and pick them up from school and have a bit of really good fun downtime before it's too late. There's no point having family time when they're tucked up in bed. You see what I mean? But when they're tucked up in bed, is ideal perhaps for wife time or for more work time, whatever it might be. But let's finish your question, Danny. Do you plan the next day in advance, or do you set time aside to work on set content, admin, and networking tasks each day? Are you secretly a magician, can bend space and time, tell your management secrets? Well, look, let's be clear with everyone. You do have to embrace the hustle a bit if you want to get productive and get things done. And I genuinely believe, this isn't a brag, we're just watching people. I genuinely believe I'm as productive as probably 3 people, because there's no slippage or space when I'm just kind of going on there. And if there is time out, it's scheduled time out. So I have plenty of rest. You know, I have like a nap time in the day. I have a bed in one of my offices. I will spend time just relaxing in the garden each day, all that kind of stuff, maybe going for a walk. That's all there, but it's all scheduled in, you see. But the rest of it is really, really getting on with things. And I think that using time islands works. So I don't plan in entirety the whole of the next day, because too much will pop up in here. You know, having a shower in the morning relaxes you and allows your brain, when relaxed, of course, to think about things pop into your head. I need to speak to that person. I have to do that application. I have to do this thing. These things are popping into my head. They wouldn't otherwise. So what I do is I have certain things that are like, those are islands. They need to be done. Today, I have this session at 1. I have a very important call at 4 o'clock, for example. I'm looking forward to having. I have a call at 6 o'clock. Those 3 things are quite important, and I've built the day around that based on my when to do list that I scheduled this morning. So that's how I approached it. So maybe that helps. Victor Watson, I am currently having a problem with time management. We've come to the right place, Victor. I'm glad you're here. I've to give time for learning, networking, and working on my projects because of my busy schedule. I found it hard to give time to family and friends. I'm also really impatient and stressful these days because of loads of unfinished work. Okay, so this is very telling. So could you please give me a suggestion on how to use or manage time efficiently in order to be productive? Thanks in advance. Thumbs up if this is something you've found. Have you found this? Is this familiar at all? Is this how it can sometimes be for you? Because this is something I hear loads, not just with entrepreneurs, but actually with people working in business as well. And what it is a feeling that you should set aside time for certain things. I should be doing learning and development. I should read every day, because they talk about how the top CEOs read a book a week. Yeah, sure. But the problem is that if you're not focusing on needs must as a kind of a primary thrust, you are missing the point. Perfect example of this is a business I've worked with where they are so focused on learning and development, which is kind of helpful for me in a way, but so focused on learning and development that application and being a practitioner, hello Jeffrey, is impeding their ability to actually write any business. What you end up with is a lot of highly educated people who understand exactly what to do, but no one actually delivering, because there's too much time spent on that. And I think you've got to ask yourself, what is the point of your role right now? If you're a business owner or leader, or if you're working in a company with some kind of specific role, ask yourself, are you giving too much time to things that are maybe more in the periphery? This is stuff that is important, can always be argued that you should be doing it, but is taking the lead over and above the day-to-day grunt work that possibly at times is more important. The perfect example is, it's fashionable to read certain books, or to watch YouTube videos or motivational stuff, or catch up with a podcast and things like that. You can fill your day with your learning stuff, and as a result, you feel like you're doing things you should be doing, because who the hell shouldn't tune in and watch or listen to this particular podcast? But what you're not doing is prioritizing the things that really matter, which may well be, in a particular person's situation, generating cash flow. And some things need to take a back seat, seriously. There have been days when I barely touch a book. I always make contact with reading at every day. And it might be that reading is a 3-minute video on YouTube, because that's quicker to consume, or listening to a podcast as I'm walking down the stairs to go to the kitchen or something like that, or throwing it onto the Sonos so I can hear all the Alexa or something like that, or reading like 5 lines of a book, because then it's just something, just kind of so that I don't get out of the habit of doing it. But I remember this from years back, when there's no money, when there's no customers, or because you know it deep down, when you can feel that it's starting to get a bit tight, and over the horizon, not far away, it's going to get difficult for customers, it's stupidity to do things that are going to cause problems for your business. You have a responsibility, especially if you have staff as well, but even if not, you have a duty of care to your business. And especially at startup stage, yes, you should be reading, yes, you should be learning, and there's that whole romance behind going to conferences and networking and things like that. And yes, that's important as well. But if it's like at the end of this week, we're screwed unless we find £1,000, it should be all in on finding that £1,000 or whatever it might be. And having the right perspective of what's needed to be done is important. I strongly believe you constantly audit that. The reason I'm saying this is because it's tempting, or rather it's seductive to fall into this trap over time of, well, I read this book each day, or I always listen to that podcast each week because I always listen to that podcast each week. And it may be that it's time to say, do you know what? That's a big old chunk of time. And right now I can't afford that. So I think this is an important question here. If you look at what Victor's asking, learning, networking, working on projects, and now he's getting stressed because it's unfinished works. Your business as a commercial vehicle has a delivery in mind as its primary objective, which is firstly oxygen to the company so it can survive, so it can do good. And that oxygen is its sales and customers. If it's a not-for-profit or a charity, then that oxygen is funds, so charity donations, for example. That is, whether you like it or not, well, the world's more about value, yeah, sure, but that's the A1 priority. When there's enough coming in that the company can breathe because it's got that oxygen, then or when we're feeling like we've got that kind of momentum, then you can pivot and do a bit more in the way of self-development, learning, things like that. Yes, that's all important stuff, but in proportion. When you are back to the wall, and I remember years back, and it's like, there are mortgages, there are cars, there's family, there's no one bringing any income, there's no payroll, it's just money I generate. Those days years back, I remember it's like, yes, let's do a bit of learning here and there, but very much a just-in-time approach. And you can't do that forever, so you have to take bigger leaps. But sometimes you just got to refocus on the stuff that matters. And David, you rightly commented here, you love the duty of care concept. It is so important. You have a duty of care to your business. If you are a solopreneur, you should still treat your business as though it's a whole kind of ecosystem of people. And because with that perspective, what would you do? How would you react? You wouldn't sit around reading books, even if they are highly relevant and going to help you learn more. And, if you look online enough, you'll see everyone posturing about how learning is everything and spending time with mentors. Yeah, but massively outweighed by being on the pitch doing. Absolutely. And I think that I'm the first person to suggest reading, as a badge right there above me. But in addition to that, I spend a lot of time networking. I've built events around a desire I have, in part, to network and further my knowledge. That's one of the reasons why I've built Entrepreneur Business Live each month. But over and above everything, it's sleeves rolled up, in the trenches, doing. That is the thing that comes first. And if it's and you earn the right to be able to then move to the periphery. Put out the fire first, all right, before you start doing other things, I suppose, is the closing line on the rant. So, Victor, that's what I'd suggest. Maybe you need to prioritize. And what I would suggest, one way of doing it is my CEL approach. I've mentioned this in the past. CEL is customers or cash flow, then essential tasks, and then lines of work. What that means is if I have a load of tasks, I'll prioritize them in order of firstly hitting things that will help with cash flow and new customers. Secondly, essential or urgent tasks, they actually come second because I want to make sure that the business still has its oxygen coming in. Okay. Once that's done, I'll move on to essential tasks. Then the third set, the L of the CEL, is lines of work, which means anything non-essential, but that's still relevant. That then's done afterwards. Those tasks that sit outside of the CE or L approach just don't come into the list. Simple as that. If they eventually move to a place when they become a line of work or essential task, well, then they feature on the list. And sometimes things just don't get done, but the main things do get done first. And prioritizing is part of the game when it comes to time management. So that's essential. Daniel, thank you for the summary. That means a lot. Hopefully that makes sense. David, great that you're enjoying this. Thumbs up if this makes sense. Do you share the philosophy? I hope so. Thanks everyone on Instagram for jumping there too. So yeah, important. So we're talking about time management today. And how long have we been going? So it's a good 40 minutes of value, I hope. Give me a thumbs up if that's been useful. Let's go to a couple more questions. So Ian Tisker, shout out to you. I hope you're well. He's said, Richard, in my personal situation, I'm struggling with content development and finding time for family when my day is eaten up with work. What are some approaches you use to fit family into your schedule so they don't feel you're ignoring or avoiding them? So I've kind of touched on this already. If I have a meeting, this isn't contradictory to what I've just said, because I'll explain in a sec. If I have a meeting with a client to close them, and if I have a nap, and if I have a hour scheduled for playtime with my children, all three things will get done today. I will set a time for them. Best hours is a concept of saying, right, when do things really need to be done? Pitching the client, I want to do that when I'm fresh. I don't want to do it in the middle of the night. So if it was by email or as a deck I'm making, let's have a bit of a switched on brain then. If it's sending out an invoice or just prepping a spreadsheet or something, that happens at the back end of the day when I'm exhausted, okay? Because that doesn't need the brain power. If I'm spending time with my children, I want to do it at the best time of day I possibly can. That will be with breakfast. So I got my children up this morning and had breakfast with them. I sat with them, I enjoyed it, and then they went off to school and to nursery. And when they get home, I will make sure that I've got time set for them from then. All is to say, as far aside from the CEL approach, what I am trying to do is make sure that everything gets done via the when to do list and nailing down set times for all of these tasks. So the way I have family built in, to answer your question here, Ian, is I don't have it as an afterthought. When I've got my work done, I'll go see family. It's not work and family, it's stuff I do. And stuff I do will include the Q&A at 1 o'clock, will include seeing family, will include maybe closing a sale. And those three things, maybe as in it's maybe something that features that day, not maybe as in I might not close it, just to be clear. But the idea is that the idea behind it is that everything gets done and I see family because I've scheduled time to see family. Because otherwise, and again, it sounds clinical. It's like, oh God, you're scheduling time, isn't that sad? No, it's not sad because it means I always get to see them. And that's essential. Okay, so fun time is scheduled so that it definitely happens. That's the way I look at it. And I think it's something worth trying out if I could ever suggest something. So some approaches you use to fit family into your schedule. I don't want them to feel like they're ignoring me. So what I'm doing is saying if I schedule time for family, then I'm focusing all in on that time for family. It's not time that I could have family around me, but I've got work to do, because that would be separate. Multitasking is the most overrated concept in the world. It's a load of nonsense. Be task orientated. Do one thing really well, then move to the next task and do that really well. Then move to the next task and do that really well. Okay, so when I'm working on, as I was this morning, 5 slide decks for tomorrow's client, I was only doing that. There was one point when I needed the bathroom and I was like, no, get this one done, then you can go. There was one point when I wanted a cup of coffee and I was like, as a little reward, once you finish the 4th one, because the last one was easy, the 4th one, now you can go and have your coffee and you got your 15 minutes, go do that because I needed to think on that last one anyway, then you can get back to it. All siloed time islands set aside for these things. And for family, okay, there's nothing on my mind while I'm working with family, when I'm with family, because it's time set for that. So hopefully that helps. It's not whimsy, and it's not arbitrary amounts of time. You know, and I know that it's nice to have a state. The world and life is in a state of flux all the time. So of course it's not as binary as this, because there is movement here and there, but you know, your ability to really turn the heat up, you know, go up a gear and really work hard to catch up if you need is essential, and sometimes you have to do that. Okay, next question from Michael Getty. Richard, how do you do it in a manner that takes into account all the unknowns that occur in the early stages of a serious startup? This is a question that comes up a load actually, but it's not come up on a Q&A. It's a really good one. What he's asking is, when you're working with time management and prioritizing, how do you make sure with a startup that you account for stuff you don't know that's going to come in? And here's a really interesting thing. A lot of people, when they start a business, they hear too many people. They hear far too many people, and they have, oh, you've got to do this. Oh, you've got to. Some stuff, if you've heard this before, you're starting a business, and I know there's one person watching in particular who's heard this before. Oh, you're starting a business, it means you have to go and register the business now. You must do this with an accountancy. You have to go and do this and this and this and this and this. And you're thinking, wow, that's 15 things to do. And I haven't even actually got a customer yet, or even fleshed out my MVP, minimum viable product proposition yet, and things like that. I'm sure for some of you, this is something you've heard. What you've got to do is say, first things first. And what you'll do is keep things as simple as possible. Yes, you heard me, and you know exactly what I'm saying over on Facebook. You know who you are. So it's fascinating that people think they have to do many different things at once. But what actually you need to be thinking is, it's as simple as, remember this, get the oxygen in the company. You don't need a flush website or e-commerce. When I started my consultancy, was probably 7 years ago, as in started consulting, I used PayPal, and I used Facebook Messenger, and I used Zoom or Skype or whatever it was at the time I was using. And that was it. That was all there was. Whoa, but what about spreadsheets and taking down your what about workflow? Didn't you have a calendar set up, Richard, to organize, the times of day and things like that? What about all the unknowns? No. Engage with people. They want to talk to you. Hop on a call, close them, and send them the PayPal link. Yeah, but with PayPal, you lose 5%, a haircut because of fees. Yes, of course you do. And yes, you can use Stripe. And now I've got it all integrated, but that takes time. And they're the complexities that you have to move towards, but don't take on to begin with. One of the reasons why so many startups fail is the poor startup business owners are trying to do too much. Get oxygen in first. Get customers and cash. Once you're getting customers and cash, start the process of automating and outsourcing. So now, if you look across the businesses I run, so there's the consultancy, there's the events business, and there's also the training company I run. Those three entities have certain elements that have to require me working in them all the time. They now have evolved to a point where they have elements such as the newsletter, for example, where there is a team. There are two people working with me to produce, to firstly research, then produce and send out the e-newsletter each week. So that is partly automated and mostly outsourced. And elements like that, when done, can allow you to grow and thrive and get bigger. You don't grow bigger by just working harder. You don't grow bigger by doing loads of just only those simple things. You grow bigger by doing only the simple things to begin with, to enable you to then allow 3% of those things to be done by someone else, or to be able to automate it, or afford to be able to pay for a piece of software or plugin that fixes it. So I moved to a place where I, with enough income from consultancy, I could then, I paid for a web designer to build a website. Then I ended up getting another one. And then I was able to use some of the money generated from courses on that to build proper e-commerce. So I could move away from PayPal. That's the way to do it. So what you do to start, the way you time manage to begin with, is you focus on, broadly speaking, the CEL approach. So cash and customers, then you move to essential tasks. Hair is on fire, must put this task out, and then lines of work comes afterwards. And keep it really simple. Money in the door, customers in the door. Then delivery is your secondary area, I suppose, after that, which is making sure that customers are happy and you actually deliver and exceed expectations, which are already high anyway. And then extra bit of time, the kind of slither of leftover time, is how do I scale or grow or outsource or automate or whatever it might be. Okay. There's a quick point here. So Danny Battersill's written on Facebook. I've been building my organizations for 3 years. We've been launching to a massive impact because we're taking the time to be a local name of help and support my local communities. But a name customers come easily goes back to the snowball effect I referred to earlier. Quite right. So what Danny's saying here is when you build a community around what you do, personal brand is an element of that. For example, when you get that right, you have momentum and people want to jump on things you do. A good example is when I launched my Basics of LinkedIn course earlier this year, people jumped on it, not because the course in and of itself was a great idea, it's because I had momentum from other things I was doing. Oh, I love the Basics of Sales course. Oh, Monetize You changed my world and I stopped having a 9 to 5, and some people making $5 grand a month as a result of it. I'll check out the LinkedIn course then because it's Richard, because I did the previous stuff. And momentum helps because you're building a community, you're a good guy, you're helping. But even that has to, at the very outset, be secondary. Ideally, you're doing it at the same time. But if there is a moment when I'm hard up for money, I need to focus on generating money. And that's the short-term plays, in addition to giving some time to long-term plays. It's ebb and flow, guys. It's like some days you're doing a bit more of something, some days you're doing a bit less, just based on what what's on the plate, I suppose. Let's do a couple more questions. Well, I've got loads more, but let's do a few more questions before we finish. Lewis Clack has asked, is there anything better than your when to do list, Richard? Well, I think it's quite handy. The when to do list, like I say, was featured in Forbes. It's been around for like 3 years or so. It's on YouTube as well, and it's I think on YouTube it's got thousands of views. It's done really well. And it's simple, but the idea is it gamifies your day, takes your to-do list and really makes it something that's quite valuable. So I'm quite proud of it, I suppose. Is there anything better? Well, you tell me. Time Islands as a concept seems to have gone quite well. Second one, next question rather, Brandy Holloway. Brandy, I think I saw you earlier. If you're here still, thank you for tuning in. And your question is, I often get inspired throughout the day and feel like if I don't write for a bit, I will lose the content that came to me, especially since I wrote all my own quotes. So I often push something back or take it off the list for the day, or take the chance of forgetting or take the chance of forgetting the content. What's your suggestions? In that moment, what's happening is there's a creative idea, but there's also an emotion, okay? And that's usually an excitement, like, oh, that's a really good idea. You get those ideas when you're just dropping off to bed sometimes, or when you've just finished work for the day, and like, damn it, that's a great idea, I could do that. Or if you're in the shower and you can't wait to get out and take action on it. When you have these creative ideas, there is an emotion typically of excitement around it, and you want to drop everything because it's like it's exciting new world kind of thing, and you could perhaps project the possibilities and potential from it. Now, when you have an inspirational idea like that, it is so easy to become derailed. Okay, so what I suggest is you take that idea and you bottle it. Now, the reason why I brought up the emotional side is because if you bottle the idea in the right way, that emotion will be captured as well. And I'm talking about voice messages to yourself. All you need to do here, Brandy, is get your phone out and record a message to yourself. Record the feeling you have, or more specifically, the detail of this idea. If you explain the idea to yourself, there'll be part of you going, this is the energy you've got in the moment is like, this is great. This is something we need to do. Here's how I'll flesh it out. And by saying it out loud, your brain will help you simulate it, and you'll be starting to think out ideas and things like that. A lot of people find this works by talking to people. Some businesses, I'm trying to think of the one, as a very famous one from a big blue chip. I can't remember which one it was, but a CEO often would gather people in a room just to talk to them about an idea, and they would never say anything. It was just his way of kind of fleshing it out. Saying over voice means you've bottled it, then you can crack on with your work. When you come back round to it later, again, silo some time for this, a time island, why not? At like 3 p.m. each day, I'll look at my ideas for the day that have come up. You'll be able to listen to it, okay, and you'll be back in that moment. I know because I've tried this, it works really well. You get back into that moment and you're like, do you know what? This is so important. This is absolutely something I should do. And when you have those set times to engage with your creative ideas, when you're work has been completed that you were working on at the time, then you can of course play them out. Okay, it's so important. And thanks so much for the feedback. Great idea. So I can hear the emotion in my voice. Yes, use voice. And Daniel as well. Brilliant. Now it's important you also do this for other things. If you are having a tough time and you're managing to pull yourself out of it, that's a good opportunity to do one of these voice notes to yourself as well. Very important, because it's about you having a word with yourself and record. Like, you must have had this sometimes. Give me a thumb up or something if you've heard this, when you've had this moment when it's like, I just bust through that wall, and how do I feel about that right now? I need to remember how I smashed through that wall. And it's not someone else. You're not writing it down because you won't carry the emotion. Do it in your voice, I remember it so well when I was starting my business, and I had this voice note that I recorded for myself, and it was me saying like something along the lines of the reasons why a day had gone really well. And the person whose voice you're going to listen to the most and really respect the most is yours. And when it's in one of those moments when you're impassioned and evangelizing about how you've won or how you've overcome something, or in Brandy's case, that you've got a great idea, it's essential that you get that down. Because listening back to it, especially if you're in a bit of a flat patch, it's going to boost you straight up. So what I'm saying here, I suppose, is if you're feeling really inspired and motivated and things going well, so bottle it then. Record it. Half the videos I record are ones for myself. There's one about motivation. It's telling you just to get the hell on with it. And on YouTube, I recorded like 4 years ago. I watched that so many times. And I'm like, when I wasn't feeling it, I was like, do you know what? Yeah, just get the hell on with it, Richard, rather than procrastinating and hoping to be motivated. That kind of approach really makes sense. So I would suggest that. And I think you can use Alexa if you're driving and record a message there, like using Alexa all the time here. But voice messages make a lot of sense. Anna Soricio, big shout out to you. Catching up with you later, helping me in operations for Entrepreneur Business Live. When is it okay to not time manage? Like, sometimes I get into a really creative mood and lose track of time. Are there times when you should go with the flow? Hopefully I've kind of answered that with Brandy's question there. I would silo times for being creative. That might sound counterintuitive because being creative can flow into you. But here's the thing. If you go back about half an hour, we talked about a duty of care. If you have a duty of care to your business, which you should have as a business owner or leader, what you have to do is silo time for being creative. You can help that time. Everyone's heard of creator's block or writer's block. When you're like, right, now I'm going to write a book. I've got 1 hour to write this content. You're like, I don't know. I can't think of anything right now. It's far better to say to yourself, I'm going to set time for writing, but if I have creative ideas throughout the day, I'll record them as voice, then I can tune in and that will get the ball rolling. Okay, so it's kind of a case of unbottling them, and then I can open all the stoppers on those bottles in the creative time. Silo time for it, because otherwise you're kind of thinking in other directions all the time. Okay, so hopefully that helps. But sometimes you have. Do you know what it is as well? And be aware of this. Sometimes the creative thing, when it pops into your head, it's so seductive because it's something fun and new, a great idea, and you're like, and I'm working on this thing right now, which is essential, but I don't really want to do it. And it's tempting to go over there because the grass is greener. It's way more stimulating and fun. You've got to grow up a bit. You need to be able to be a bit more adult than that and not be played by your emotions. It's so easy to say to yourself, I'll just go and think about this creative idea. And isn't that fun? Because you get to play out interesting ideas. That's not being a business leader, because sometimes stuff needs to get done. Sorry. So actually, that's why it's wise to have a set time for a sensitively placed set time for creativity, because actually stuff needs doing. Okay. And if you keep derailing yourself because, I'm just getting into this design right now and I love doing this, creative thing, you end up not getting the basics done that need to be done. Okay. So sorry. Sometimes you have to say no to yourself. So I think it's worth adding that. If there's time set aside where you need to pitch because your company needs oxygen, that's what needs doing right now. Because otherwise, in a week from now, you've had your fun doing the creative thing. And I'm not belittling it. I'm just saying there's a time and a place. If you're working on selling, for instance, and you want to go do something else, so finish the selling first, then you learn the right to go do something else. Earlier today, I really wanted a cup of coffee. Earn the right to get the cup of coffee. Richard, finish this slide deck first. You're almost there. Oh, but I want a cup of coffee. Nope, finish the slide deck. So being quite extreme with yourself like that is important, because your mind will want to go wander. And if you're only accountable to yourself, it's very easy to go, do you know what? Who's going to mind? Get in the habit of saying no to yourself sometimes. And again, as long as you do create balance by having time set aside each day when you are being creative. Monday's a very big creation day for me, for example. Then it's fine. I want to finish on one more question, because I've got one here from Avinash Wakachuri. He's asked, Richard, how do I manage work when you have traffic on the road, and how to handle clients when they're taking too much time? That's an urgency question there. But managing work when you have traffic on the road, well, think about what you're going to be doing and how long for. Yesterday, I had some errands to run, and I knew I was going to be in a car for best part of an hour. Okay, so the work I had to do that day was scheduled around that, and that hour was set aside for the current. It's just been released, the latest Richard Branson autobiography, Finding My Virginity. So it's the sequel to Losing My Virginity. It's brilliant, by the way, but it's like 17 hours on audiobook. So I'd suggest you go check that out. But yeah, I was like, that's my reading done for the day. Because when I'm driving to these different places, these different things that need to be done, I will be listening to that. And that was the work I had set aside, so that I didn't have to do any other reading that day. What I also do is I do work through voice. So I've mentioned a lot of voice here today, but overwhelmingly, I connect with my team and with a lot of my clients, not by email anymore. When it comes to kind of Q&As, when they fire questions at me, I do it by voice. So because I'm on the fly and I'm driving, or if I'm walking, rather than tapping away and crashing into lampposts and things like that, I'm just constantly sending voice messages, and they do the same to me. It's so much easier. I have a client, for example, and they'll send me like each day about 10 voice messages to explain all the things they've worked on, questions, things like that. And I'll just respond via voice as well. Because when I'm doing stuff, when I'm waiting for the kettle to boil, I've nailed a client. I remember doing it the other day, and I was like, I did like 3 client reports, which we now do via voice, on the way to pick up my child from school. Because I was walking up there, it was like 5 minutes. Right, let's get this time in. So I'm enjoying the view. Not doing this. I'm enjoying the view, and I'm listening here, and I'm recording voice as I go, and it's handling that work. So think about what you can and can't do. Voice, and if you can't do voice, well, then focus on on listening to a podcast or something like that, or record some content. If content generation is an issue as well, spend some time recording content. Oh, but I don't have a camera and I can't do it when I'm driving. So record an audiobook. Do you see what I mean? Record the next podcast or something like that. It's very well done that way. And urgency is clearly what you need if someone's taking too much time. DM me, Avinash, and we'll talk about that, and we can bring it up at another Q&A. Thank you so much, everyone. You guys are amazing. So many people coming in. Someone's asked just now on YouTube, is this pre-recorded? No. As it says live right there, it's not pre-recorded. But thanks everyone for listening on the podcast. I'll say goodbye to you guys on YouTube.